Okay, when it comes to appearing defensive, are there any subtle signs or body language cues the interviewer should be aware of? How can candidates become self-aware and avoid potentially coming across as defensive? The idea is if you're asked a question about something, being defensive means that you're almost like angry with a person for asking it. Your face frowns along those lines. So I'll just tell you a question or a thing that happened to me. I was interviewing this girl not too long ago, a couple of years ago, to be a personal assistant. She had this kind of gap on her resume and the interview was going great. She was selling herself. She was just on fire. And anyway, so she was asked something about, she had this gap on her resume, and I asked her about it, and her whole demeanor changed. She frowned. She became just upset, and she grimaced at me. And so that's what defensive is. And so that particular person got mad about something. So you should be prepared for anything negative that comes across. There's a Pink Floyd song where they say, exposing every weakness, no matter how carefully hidden or something. And that's what attorneys do. And they're attorneys. Their job is to pull up this sort of information. So you need to look at that and be careful that whatever they say, you can come across with a good answer and be aware of anything that comes up. And so the second you're defensive, that creates problems. So people become defensive about a lot of things. So your job is to get a job. Sometimes people will be asked questions that are inappropriate, like about marriage or children or different things that just shouldn't be asked about whatever. And then they become defensive. If an employer does, that's not something, you don't have to go work there. But if you want to work there, then you need to be very careful about how you react to that. Because if you say to someone, I'm not comfortable with this, that's going to hurt you and you're not going to get the position. So people will do things that are inappropriate. People will ask you questions about things that are weaknesses in your resume. They'll ask you if you don't have your grade point. They'll ask you about your grades. If you have a gap in your resume, they'll ask you about that. If you're, I don't know, anything that you can think of, they will ask you about. So you need to be very careful. And anytime you're asked those questions, you want to make sure that you're aware that you could be asked them and just rehearse answers that you can think of that are positive in your background. And so the final thing I just want to say, and I apologize for spending so much time on this question, but the most important thing that you have to understand is anytime an attorney is asked something by a judge in an oral argument, the attorney needs to turn it around and make it look like whatever this negative answer or negative aspect of their case is, that it's actually a positive. This is the most basic thing that attorneys do. It's what you learn when you're in moot court. It's what you learn when you're doing briefs and things as your first year for legal writing or whatever and arguing. So this is the number one requirement of an attorney that you learn very early. It's to take any negative statement and anything that's questioned that's negative and turn it into a positive or give a really good answer that makes the person like you and believe in it or empathize with you. So this is what attorneys do. And so your inability to do that will create issues. And so a lot of these things, like attorneys forget, like you learn this stuff when you're in law school, but then you forget about it and stop doing it when you're interviewing or practicing.